Hi everyone, welcome back to the Pro MMA Betting Podcast. I'm putting in the UFC 236 podcast early. I thought, why not? We've had a 2-week break, which none of us are used to this year. We've had UFC week on week, so I done tape on this event about a week ago now. I'm quite deep into the Russian card, so I wanted to do the pod now rather than wait until next week, because I'm going to forget a lot of information from the tape that I've watched, because it's been over a week now since I fully cap this card, so I don't want to leave it any longer. Just to quickly recap on how we got on the UFC on ESPN Barboza Gaethje card. One pre-tip to members, it was 4 units on Alex Perez at -225 or 4 to 9. Came in easily, comfortable victory there, so it was 1.8 units profit. We also profited on live bet around 2.8 units profit, so we had about a 4.5 unit week on the Barboza Gaethje card, so really good event for us. Also took us to 9-1 on UFC events for pre-bets in 2019, so we're currently riding a 90% hit rate. Realistically, it's not sustainable, I don't think. I'd love to keep that going, because that is a lot of cash for me and a lot of cash for members. But yeah, realistically, it's probably not going to continue. I aim for a 75% hit rate, so I'm more than happy at the moment. But yeah, I am aware of potential downturn maybe hitting us at some point. It is betting, we can't win week on, week out, but so far we've been hitting a tremendous hit rate, so hopefully we can keep this moving forward onto the UFC 236 card. If you are looking at joining, please check out the website prommmabetting.com. All the membership packages are on there. Live betting packages are available, pre-betting packages are available, and a combination of the two. If you are interested in live betting, we use Discord, so you just need to download the Discord app. We offer the live betting via audio link, so you just literally need to turn on your mic, or actually you mute your mic, just have your speakers on so you can hear the tips being given out. Some people have problems with actually connecting to the audio, so all the bets are typed out as well, so you can hit them. It's been a money train for us. I'm really glad that we've implemented live betting to the service, and the pre-bets have been great so far. Like I said, 9-1 on UFC events in 2019. Please follow us on Twitter at Pro MMA Betting, and also please hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. I'm trying to gain as much traction as I can by breaking down every UFC card moving forward. We've done them all, I think, in 2019, so yeah, the aim is to keep it going and pull out podcasts for every single UFC this year. So please hit the subscribe button, and we're going to move on to the actual UFC 236 card there, starting from the bottom up, and break down every fight on the card. There's one other thing to note, just in terms of profit that members have made so far this year. If you do bet $100 or £100 per unit, you would be up. We're at £5,700 or dollars profit now, so hopefully we can break into the 6,000 mark for 100 unit, for £100 per unit or $100 per unit bettors for UFC 236. So really good turnaround so far, considering we're only basically a quarter of the way through the betting year in terms of events. We've had 10, there's about 40 scheduled, so you're on target if you're a £100 per unit or $100 per unit better. At the moment we're on target for about 20 grand profit, so I really hope we can keep this going and hit that 20k mark. But let's move on to the UFC 236 card and break down some fights. So first fight of the night is in the men's bantamweight division. Brandon Davis moving down to 135 for the first time. Be interesting to see how he's going to look at 135. I thought that he looked like a 145er in terms of he's got a good frame, he's 5'10", and we have seen lately as well people moving up in weight, it's really paying dividends for them, and people moving down, it's not working out so well. They're just draining themselves too much, they're struggling to make the weight, it's affecting their cardio and performance. I really do think the future is for fighters moving up and not draining themselves as much, but Brandon's decided to drop to 135. He's had a bit of a tough run in the UFC, so I guess he's thinking new lease of life at 135, but I'm not sure it's the right decision for him, but let's see how he is on fight day. Taking on Randy Costa here. Randy Costa trains with Joe Lozon. He's 4-0. I'm assuming the only reason Randy Costa is in the UFC is because Joe Lozon's called in a favour. He's fought no one with a winning record. His fights, I don't think he's been past 90 seconds as a pro. He's had one amateur fight, I think that was back in 2014, that went to round 2. So he's a real unknown quantity. From the tape that's available, looks like he's got pretty good kicks. Looks like he might be a little bit wild with his hands, but just generally it's just really hard to get a proper read on him. Brandon Davis is a striker, trains out in Mississippi with Jason Knight. Been in the UFC a while now. Nice stand up. He's got good volume. He is hittable though. Before I done tape, I thought he was better defensively than he actually is, but he is pretty hittable. I noticed as well that he does tend to slow down as fights progress, but all of his fights pretty much have been really high volume affairs, so it's supposed to be expected. But that does worry me a little that he's cutting down to 135 now. Is his cardio going to be kind of jeopardised even more? He's not really had a fight in the UFC except for the Austin Arnett fight where he's just been able to strike. If you watch the Contender Series fight with Austin Arnett, it's a really good fight, both just back and forth. Clear win for Brandon Davis, but he definitely got hit a lot more than I would have liked. But he seems to have a really solid chin, just 8 Austin Arnett shots, and I haven't seen him hurt in the UFC at all. Since then he made his debut against Kyle Bochniak. He lost unanimous decision there. Kyle mixed in a lot of wrestling in that fight. Stephen Peterson, he got a comprehensive decision victory over. Had Peterson badly hurt in round 3. Peterson's a grinder though. Again, looking a lot for takedowns, trying to pressure him. Enrique Barzola, he lost a unanimous decision to. Barzola wrestled him in that fight basically. Just couldn't get his striking going, just kept getting wrestled. And then last time out he fought Zabit Magomed Sharapov. A fairly competitive first round on the feet. Brandon's definitely a solid striker. He's fundamentally very sound, but like I said, he is pretty hittable, and he does rely a lot on the head movement and bobbing and weaving, kind of to avoid getting hit. Doesn't really keep his hands up so much, so he is hittable. I've got to pick him here over Randy Costa just because Randy's an unknown quantity. He may not be UFC quality. 4-0, never been past 90 seconds, fought absolutely no one. I mean, there's got to be a bit of hype around him if I'm assuming Joe Lozon's called in a favour to get him in the UFC already, but you've got to imagine he's just not ready. I did see him on James Lynch saying Max Holloway was 4-0 when he made his UFC debut, so I mean, I guess it has worked in the past, but generally speaking, guys this raw just aren't ready for the UFC. So I'm gonna pick Brandon Davis to win a decision. Like I said, it's his first time at 135, so that is a worry. Randy is an unknown quantity, but Brandon's going to get the fight he wants here. I'm assuming. I think it's just going to be a stand-up fight. He's not going to have to worry about any wrestling whatsoever. So that's what he's been calling for. So let's see if he can deliver the goods. But yeah, I think he's had a number of UFC fights, Brandon. I mean, he's been in there with a beat. He's used to the UFC lights. Let's see how Randy responds. But as I said, hard to get a full read from the tape available. He does look like a decent striker, decent kicks, but at the same time he looked fairly wild to me as well. So I'm going to go with Brandon, but I don't think 135 is really where his future is. But let's see how he looks. But if this is a high-paced fight and he can't get Randy out of there and he starts to slow down, could get nervy. The betting line at the moment, Brandon's he's gone up slightly, minus 160. He did open, I think it was like an even line. Yeah, opened up at evens, which, yeah, I think the line's probably about right. I mean, I wouldn't argue if Brandon was maybe even up to minus 200 just because of the UFC experience. He's been 3 rounds multiple times, and Randy's just very green. So I think there is maybe a little bit of value on the line. It's definitely not something you can go big on because of the unknowns, but I can see why Brandon could be a slightly bigger favourite here. Obviously, I wouldn't look at him kind of getting on above minus 200 because, you know, he's got a 9-5 record. He's got a losing record in the UFC. He's got a clear gap in his game with regards to the wrestling and grappling, but I don't think that's going to come into play here. He is going to get the fight he wants. So I'm going to say Brandon Davis via decision. Women's strawweight bout next. We've got Lauren Muller taking on Poliana Botelho. Just looking at a quick look at the stats. Botelho's 5'8". She's got 3 inches of height on her. Metric hasn't got Paulina's reach listed. Muller is 67 inches. They're both orthodox. Botelho's 3 years older. Strikes landed per minute. Muller's just under 5. Botelho's up at 4. Absorbed. Muller's 3.5. Botelho 2.5. Grappling wise, yeah, these two don't really go for takedowns. Both average less than 1 takedown per 15 minutes. Both their takedown defences is up at around 90%. Botelho trains out of Nova and Yao. 7-2 professional record. 6 of those wins are by a stoppage. One decision loss and 1 submission loss, which we saw against Cynthia Calvillo last time out. Hard fight for me to get a full read on. Basically, I went back with Botelho. I went back and watched the Karina Rodriguez fight. That is, it's nearly 5 years ago. Stops her with a spinning back kick. I watched there's only highlights available of the Juarez fight. She does get dropped in that fight. She can be a bit wild with her hands. Since she's been in the UFC, it's hard to get a read on her. The Pel Gonzalez fight is pretty much Pel hugging her on the fence for the full 3 rounds. Kondo, she stopped very quickly with a vicious body kick. And Cynthia Calvillo, again, she got taken down after a couple of minutes and submitted. So I don't have a full read on how good Botelho's stand-up is. She does hit hard. She's definitely vicious to the body. I just don't have a read on her volume or her hands or how she is defensively. It's quite a tough fight for me to read. Lauren Muller, I watched all of her UFC fights. She made her debut on the Contender Series against Kelly McVeil Velasco. She absolutely, she pretty much savaged Kelly in that fight. Albeit, I think Kelly did take round 2 in that fight. But Kelly's, I think she's quite low level, so it's hard to kind of read too much into that fight. Then she faced Shana Dobson, 1-1 going into round 3. She won round 3, but she did get hurt to the body pretty badly towards the end of round 3. And then she took a fight over in China in November, and she got armbarred in the first round. So she still seems pretty green, Lauren. She made her debut in 2015 professionally. She trains out of Alliance, so she's got a good camp. Yeah, it's a tough one for me to get a read on, especially with Poliana. I'm just not quite sure where she's at in terms of her volume, her hands and defensively, but I think she's going to be too much for Muller here. I am conscious of Muller getting hurt to the body. Poliana will target the body. She's got really vicious body kicks. I'm not sure how the hand fight plays out here. I'm not sure who's got the better hand, so this could be a close fight. The betting line currently is, I think it's about right, Poliana minus 155. You have to give her the edge here, just purely based on what we've seen so far. She faced girls of a higher level than Lauren has in Pel Gonzalez, Kondo and Cynthia Calvillo. Muller's kind of been fighting at the lower level, so I'd say it's a step up for her, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a really competitive fight. But I'm going to go with Poliana to win a decision here. But just from what I've seen, she just does look a little bit defensively flawed. I did see her get dropped. I mean, it was 5 years ago, but Juarez did drop her. I'm just not sure how solid she is standing. But she has faced Gonzalez and Cynthia, who were trying for takedowns, or at least with Cynthia you would be very wary of the takedown. So maybe we haven't seen her full arsenal yet in the UFC. With Muller, she's probably not going to be worried about the UFC, so she might with takedowns, sorry. So we might see Poliana just be real comfortable here, be able to let her hands and legs go. So I'm going to go with Poliana to win, probably a decision. And I'm hoping this does go 3 rounds, because it will give us a much better read on where Polyana's ceiling is at. And it also gives us a better read on Müller as well, because she has fought lower level. Was 1-1 with Shana going into round 3. So where is Lauren's ceiling at? She's only young, 27, so she could be making some leaps still. So yeah, I'm quite interested in seeing this fight. But the pick is Polyana to win. But I just don't feel I have a full read on it, so it's a difficult one for me to be overly confident in, and a difficult one for me to bet. Men's bantamweight division next. We've got the giant Montel Jackson, the man with bigger hands than Francis Ngannou, taking on Andrei Sukhumtov. Montel with 7-1 record in MMA. Andrei 13-6. Montel's inch taller at 5'10". He's got a 5-inch reach advantage. Fights out of a southpaw stance. Sukhumtov is orthodox. He's 4 years younger. Strikes landed per minute, just over 3.5 for Montel. Sukhumtov just over 3. Absorbed, Montel's just under 2. Sukhumtov just under 4. Takedown average, Montel averages over 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. His takedown accuracy 100% currently. Sukhumtov 1.5. I think that's probably just from the O'Malley fight, where he was taking O'Malley down once he injured his leg. Takedown defense for Montel 68%. That'd be skewed by the Ricky Simon fight, and Sukhumtov 75%. I like Montel a lot. I think he's a very, very bright prospect, very big guy for the division. Seems to make the weight no problem as well. I haven't really seen him have any kind of issues making the weight so far, and he is 26 now, so is he still filling out? Maybe, but seems to be comfortably making that 135 limit. I mean, you've got to think at some point he has to go up to featherweight, but seems fine at the moment. We saw him on the Contender Series back in June last year. Comfortable victory. Needed to be careful with eye pokes though with his hands. And he fought Ricky Simon in his UFC debut. Really tough fight. Ricky's a really tough guy to look good against, and I mean, I was pretty impressed by his performance in that fight. I mean, Ricky clearly won the fight, but he was competitive, and it was a tough stylistic fight for him. And then last time out, he looked fantastic against Brian Kelleher, who is a solid fighter, UFC veteran, tough guy, and yeah, took him out in just over a minute. Real impressive performance. Andrei Sukhumtov is pretty much a striker. He's been in the UFC for a little while now. He's got a 2-3 record, coming off a win over Jonathan Martinez. Prior to that, he had a loss to Sean O'Malley. One of my favourite bets of 2018, that was. I got Sean O'Malley at dog odds, and until Sean hurt his leg in, I think it was round 3, he was absolutely cruising in that fight. He had a come from behind win over Luke Sanders. Luke was comfortably winning, caught Luke with a big shot, put him down. And before that, he had a controversial split decision loss to Alejandro Perez, and also lost a split decision to Albert Morales. Yeah, I mean, Sukhumtov's fight IQ was really questioned after the O'Malley fight. Not sure if people have been a little bit harsh on him. He had taken quite a beating up until that point, so I wouldn't be surprised if he had some kind of concussion. But yeah, if he kept that fight standing instead of going for takedowns on O'Malley in round 3, he would have won, because O'Malley couldn't stand up because of the leg. But if we remove the fluky leg injury, he was getting absolutely styled on until then. He got a win over Jonathan Martinez last time out. I wasn't overly impressed. I had it 1-1 going into round 3, and Martinez, pretty raw fighter, making his UFC debut. So yeah, he's a striker, Sukhumtov. He's going to look to strike here, but I have to go with Montel. I think Montel is a legit prospect. I think he's going to get a comfortable win here, to be honest with you. Sukhumtov's never been finished, so if Montel can finish him, that will make a statement. Montel's betting line is it's increasing. It's up at -440 now. To be honest, he was at -400, -350, -400, and I didn't really have a problem with that. That's how high I am on Montel. It's starting to get a little bit silly now. -440. Montel is You know, he's still fairly green. He's only had, well, the Dana White Contender Series fight and 2 fights in the UFC, but for me, I think he's legit. He's got very solid striking. He's got a strong wrestling background, huge hands, very big for the weight. I think this guy's going to be a problem in the division. The UFC needs to just match him accordingly, and I think they're doing that well so far. Brian Kelleher, now Andrei Sukumtov. Give him another couple of lower level bantamweight guys just to let him really bed in the UFC, find his game, get comfortable in there, because I legitimately think they've got a prospect here. Now, I could be wrong, I've been wrong before, but I really do like the look of this guy. So I'm going to go with Montel Jackson. I'll say decision, just because Sukumtov's not been stopped before, but I wouldn't be shocked if Montel gets him out of here, and I think that should be Montel's aim here, is to try and get the finish, but be intelligent about it, because that really will make a statement in the bantamweight division if he takes out Sukumtov. So I'm going to go with Montel to win a decision. Last fight on the Fight Pass card, we've got a really good fight, this Curtis Millender taking on Belal Muhammad. Quick look over the stats. Curtis 2-3 inches taller than Belal. He's got 4-inch reach advantage. They're both orthodox fighters, both similar age. Millender significant strikes per minute 4. Belal's just over 4.5. Absorbed, Curtis is basically at 3 significant strikes absorbed per minute. Belal's at 4. Curtis, he doesn't go for takedowns. Belal averages just over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. 33% takedown accuracy. Millender's takedown defense 53%, Belal's at 90%. So really good matchmaking here in the men's welterweight division. I'm looking forward to this fight. This is basically, I mean, Belal is well rounded, but this is going to be, I think, striker versus grappler fight in terms of what Belal's game plan is going to be here. Curtis Millender, very dangerous on the feet, rangy guy, really good knees. He's got some good straight punches as well. Made his debut against Thiago Alves, took Thiago Alves out in the second round with a knee. Max Griffin outstruck in rounds 2 and 3. Bahadrzada, he won a decision over. Competitive fight that was. Well, it wasn't competitive really, he was getting outstruck, but Saya started to get his wrestling going later on in that fight, and he's coming off a loss literally a month ago to Zaleski. So real quick turnaround for Millender here. I'm surprised he's coming back so quickly. So basically with Millender, yeah, really good striking, very dangerous on the feet. Big red flag with Curtis though is his takedown defense isn't great, and his get-up game is even worse. If we go back to 2015, he had a fight in Bellator that he lost to Brennan Ward, where he ended up on his back. Brennan Ward got his back and basically choked him out instantly. It's just something that doesn't seem to have improved in his game. Thiago Alves hit a takedown on him towards the end of round 1 in the middle of the cage. Thiago had him flat on his back. Didn't look like Curtis was going to be getting up anytime soon. The end of the round came. Max Griffin took him down in round 1, held him down for pretty much all of round 1 to win round 1. Just showed no ability to get up. Saya started taking him down in that fight. Gave his back up to Saya. Saya opted to pound away as opposed to trying to put his hooks in and take the back. But yeah, had him down a few times. And then Zaleski took him down pretty much straight away, took his back and choked him out. So there's a big hole in Curtis's game there. Now, Belal Muhammad is someone that's been in the UFC a while. He mixes in striking and wrestling pretty much every fight. So I imagine it's definitely going to be key for him here, and that he's going to go for it. He does struggle with solid strikers. If you look at who he struggled with, Jeff Neal, Vicente Luque, kind of athletic boxer types with big power in their hands, fast hands. Lost his debut to Alan Jouban as well. Got dropped in that fight numerous times, but he managed to keep coming back. He is really tough. Vicente Luque took him out early with I think it was a left hook. but he took some big punishment from Jeff Neal and managed to stay in there. So he is tough, but he is hittable. Belal does have quite a big head. He's definitely there to be hit. Not really got any head movement. Curtis is going to have opportunities here when the fight's standing to land, especially with that reach advantage he's got. He's going to be able to land in nice straight shots. Belal has to be careful with the knees as well. But Belal has shown a very smart fighter IQ in his fights. He's mixed in wrestling and solid back control along with striking against opponents like Montano, Randy Brown, Jordan Mine. Tim Means he struggled with the takedowns, but I think Tim Means has got very underrated takedown defense, and he also used it on Chance Racontre. He hit a couple of takedowns on Jeff Neal, had him down, but Jeff Neal showed really good athleticism and get-up ability, something we just haven't seen from Curtis. So if we look at Belal's opponents in terms of kind of similar fighters in terms of their range, Randy Brown would fall kind of into the Curtis Millender frame. Chance Racontre would as well, I'd say. Jordan Mine, no, maybe he's a bit shorter. Tim Means would as well. He did struggle with takedowns there, but Tim Means got underrated takedown defense. So this is going to be whether Belal can get this fight to the floor and keep Curtis on the floor. If this is going to be a stand-up fight for 3 rounds, Curtis will win a decision or knock Belal out. So from what we've seen though, Curtis, just his takedown defense isn't great, and he's just not good on the floor. Belal, when he gets people down, he's got a good back take. I mean, he's not a finisher. I don't think he's got one finish in the UFC except for the late finish on Montano. So if he can't finish Curtis, then that means, you know, rounds start on their feet. So Curtis is going to have 3 opportunities to start rounds on the feet where he's got the advantage. So Belal does need to be careful wider on the feet. He needs to try and look for a finish. I see him having Millender's back, but just does he have the ability to get the finish? I mean, Millender's been choked twice really quickly. It's not like he's great at defending, so I wouldn't be shocked if Belal managed to sink a choke here. And it's only a month since his last fight, so it's not like Curtis has had a chance to improve. And as I said, the Bellator fight in 2015, it just seems to show that he's not really made any improvements in 4 years in that aspect of his game. So there's a big worry there that Curtis Millender hasn't. I mean, I'm sure he's worked on it, but it just, for whatever reason, just hasn't really improved. So I'm going to pick Belal here. This is a close fight. Belal's about a -130 favourite. I think the line's roughly right. Maybe, yeah, I think it's about right. I just think Belal can get the takedowns going. It's something that he's always used. If you look at Millender's opponents who have been taking him down, these are guys that don't normally use takedowns. It's not part of their fight IQ. Max Griffin, Saya, Thiago Alves. I mean, even Zaleski was 2-19 on takedowns attempted in the UFC prior to the Millender fight. So, and then he comes out and just takes Millender that easily and takes his back and chokes him out. So, you know, these are guys that normally stand and bang, and they're having success wrestling with Millender. And Belal isn't someone that will just stand there and bang. He does every fight mixing his wrestling, ground control, back control. So Belal's going to be comfortable doing that against Millender. And yeah, I think he's going to win a decision. But if he does struggle to get the takedowns, I don't think he will. I think he can get Millender down, but if he does, then on the feet, definitely advantage Millender, and it could potentially knock Belal out, because Belal is hittable, and we've seen him dropped in the UFC numerous times, and we saw Vicente knock him out. So he needs to fight smart here, Belal. Belal isn't a Colby Covington type. He's not going to be on Millender chain wrestling him for 15 minutes. There are going to be spells where they are standing on the feet, so there are going to be opportunities for Curtis, but Belal needs to fight intelligently, keep as a bigger range as he can, and hit them takedowns like he does, and take that back and try and get the submission really, so he doesn't give Curtis 3 opportunities to start back on the feet. So yeah, really interesting fight. Really excited to see how this one plays. I'm going to go Belal to win. I'm going to say a decision. I think he can get a submission, but I wouldn't be shocked if he gets knocked out. But I'm going to go Belal to win the decision here. First fight on the ESPN card, guys, is Boston Salmon taking on Khalid Taha. It's a fight I'm just going to pass on, especially as a bettor. It's really hard to get a read on it. Boston's been out for a long time. Khalid, I faded against Nad Narimani just purely based on his ground game. This is going to be a stand-up fight. Boston's got good boxing. Khalid's got good stand-up. Kind of mixes up his stand-up more than Boston. But yeah, it's a very hard fight to get a read on, especially with the layoff for Boston. So I'm not even making a prediction here, guys. I'm going to be realistic and just say if you're betting it, I mean, I think a lot of it is a bit of guesswork, really. The line's near enough even money. It's a flip a coin type of fight. I just don't really see how you can get a strong read on it. So I recommend passing. I'm passing on making a prediction even, just because I just can't get a read on the fight, and long layoffs always put me off as well. So it's a pass fight for me. The next fight is the welterweight division. We've got Zelim Imadaev taking on Max Griffin. Zelim making his UFC debut, Dagestani fighter. I went back and watched tape on Zelim. I managed to find the fight that he wins in the third round. All these other fights are over pretty quickly, so it's hard to get a full read on him. The three rounder, he was only 21 or 22. I mean, looked a little bit raw in the fight, but ultimately looked pretty well rounded. Mixed in his wrestling, ground control, some striking. Seems like a really aggressive fighter. Got power in his hands, but hasn't fought anyone. You know, this is a big step up against Max Griffin. So this is a case of, are you going to buy into the hype? Dagestani fighter. They all come with hype. He's 8-0 with 8 KOs. But as I say, big step up here against Max Griffin, who's been in there with the best of the best. Fought Colby Covington in the UFC. He's fought Zaleski. He's fought Mike Perry, Curtis Millender, Thiago Alves. He got absolutely robbed in the Thiago Alves fight last time out. That should not read a split decision loss. He won that fight. He got Braziled there, unfortunately for Max. I was very happy at the time because I live betted Thiago after round 2, because Thiago did take round 2, but he definitely didn't lose that fight. That was a win for him. Max, he's got good power in his hands. He's got solid boxing. That's pretty much his game. He did take Curtis Millender down in the first round. He kept top control there, but pretty much normally you just see him striking. He does get rocked in every fight. Colby Covington just bludgeoned him for 3 rounds. The ref eventually stopped that one. He got rocked by Zaleski badly in round 1. He must have fought that fight with a concussion. Curtis Millender had him hurt. Thiago Alves even had him hurt in round 2. So I'm a little bit worried that Max's chin is kind of ready to crack. He knows Zelim. He said that they'd done a little bit of work together at Extreme Couture. I listened to his interview on James Lynch. He basically said Zelim's good. He called Zelim a gym bully though. Said he goes really hard in sparring. Said that he was following guys to the car park who managed to out wrestle him and stuff. So yeah, he seems really intent on teaching Zelim a lesson. Quite a bit of dislike was coming from Max from that interview. Yeah, but this is a case of, do you buy into the hype and opt for Zelim, or do you go for the fighter in Max, who we know what we're going to get, who's a solid professional? It's a tough one to bet, because if you are betting either guy, it's a bit of guesswork because we just don't know how good Zelim is. So I did consider betting Zelim, I admit, when he was plus money, but ultimately I just decided not to because it was guesswork. I definitely wouldn't bet Zelim now. He's minus 115, so a slight favourite. It's basically a pick and fight. I think that's lined correctly, because although Zelim hasn't faced anyone, these Dagestani fighters, they're normally pretty good even when they take a step up. So I'm going to just go with gut here and pick Zelim. I could be wrong. Might not be a great fighter at all, but I think from the tape I've watched, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure. I think he's going to put the pressure on Max. Max is probably going to land some heavy shots. Zelim's going to have to show a bit of a chin, but I just think the pressure's going to be too much for Max. I think Zelim might get to him at some point. It seems to have. I mean, he's fought no one, but he seems to crack. And Max has just been wobbled a lot, so I'm just think that chin might be ready to go. So I'm going to take a leap of faith in Zelim here. I don't recommend anyone betting it. If you do, just bet it small, because it is a bet where you are incorporating a lot of guesswork and a lot of faith in the Dagestani fighter. I mean, who better than to trust Dagestani fighters? They're probably the best ones to take that leap of faith with, but when we bet, we have to be smart, and there are a lot of unknowns here, so I don't recommend a bet, but I'm going to buy into the hype here. I liked what I saw from Zelim, even though he was facing inadequate competition. Got a good feeling about him. He's only 24. I'm going to pick him to win by probably decision. I mean, Max, I think his chin might be ready to go, but Max has lasted to a decision with some beast, so I'm going to say Zelim decision. And I hope it does go 3 rounds, because it definitely gives a better idea on Zelim. I hope he don't come out and starch Griffin really quickly, because it's not going to tell us anything more about him. He's still going to be an unknown quantity. So yeah, I really hope this goes 3 rounds, but I'm going to pick Zelim to win this fight. Men's flyweight division: Wilson Hayes against Alexandre Pantoja. Hayes 23-9, Pantoja 20-3. Similar height. Pantoja's an inch taller at 5'5", 2-inch reach advantage for Pantoja, 5 years younger. Hayes is southpaw, Pantoja's orthodox. Strikes landed per minute, Pantoja's up at over 4, Hayes just under 2. Strikes absorbed, Hayes is at 3, Pantoja's at just over 3. Takedown average per 15 minutes, Wilson is at 5, Pantoja's under 1. Hayes takedown accuracy 43%. Pantoja's is 50%, but yeah, Pantoja doesn't really go for takedowns. He's pretty happy to strike. Takedown defense for Hayes is 47% and Pantoja is 60%. So the stats kind of sum up this fight really. Pantoja definitely has the advantage standing. If this is a stand-up fight for 3 rounds, Hayes is going to win this fight. Pantoja is going to win this fight. This is just whether Hayes can get his grappling going, get his grind on. And if he can keep Pantoja down, basically. So we saw Pantoja on The Ultimate Fighter. He won his first 2 fights against Marino and Kai Kara France. Lost to Ogi Kubo, a Japanese fighter. He basically got held down for the best part of 2 rounds. This is going back nearly 3 years ago now, 2.5 years. So he lost the decision there. Made his UFC debut against Eric Shelton at Altitude. Both slowed down in that fight, but I thought Pantoja won that fight. It's a split decision, but I did give it to Pantoja. Win over Neil Siri. That was I had that 1-1 going into round 3. He managed to get the submission on Siri in round 3. Then he lost to Dustin Ortiz. Very, very close fight. Pantoja won round 1 with basically had Ortiz's back for most of round 1. Round 2, Ortiz basically had a lot of control on the fence with Pantoja. Then he outstruck Brandon Marino, and then Sasaki managed to get a quick submission win over. Trains at American Top Team there, Pantoja. He's 28 years of age as well, so he's kind of in that prime slot age-wise. He's training at a good camp. To win this fight, he's scrambling and getting back to his feet and being able to disengage from Wilson Hayes needs to be on point. If he can keep separating from Hayes, stop him having any ground control, he will win the stand-up. Wilson Hayes, he is 34 years of age now. Is he going to start to regress? Is he regressing? I think he's kind of at that point. I don't think we're going to see any more improvements out of Wilson Hayes. He's been in the UFC a while now. He was on a 3-fight skid. I mean, he lost to DJ and Cejudo, so no shame in that. Then he lost the fight to John Moraga, and then he's coming off a win over Ben 10. If we look at same opponents, they both fought Dustin Ortiz, and Wilson Hayes just shut Ortiz down, just out-grappled him basically for 3 rounds. Ortiz just couldn't get rid of Hayes basically in the clinch. It was just grinding on him, hitting takedowns. Pantoja lost very close, but he lost the decision to Ortiz because Ortiz was able to pretty much get his grind going on him. So has Ortiz improved? Because they both fought Ortiz 2 years apart. Pantoja fought him 2 years later. Possibly Ortiz just gave Joseph Benavidez a really good fight. So there is that to bear in mind. But in terms of mutual opponent, Hayes would definitely beat Ortiz easier than, well, Pantoja actually lost. But yeah, Hayes pretty much controlled the whole fight. But I don't like looking too much into MMA maths. Hayes did lose to John Moraga. Couldn't, and he did in round 3, but up until then he was struggling to keep Moraga down. Moraga kept being able to get back to his feet and disengage him from the clinch. And then even against Ben 10, I mean, he had a lot of control with Ben on the fence and managed to get Ben down a lot, but he could never keep Ben down. Ben kept getting back to his feet, and ultimately, or eventually, he managed to disengage Hayes every time as well when he did have him clinched against the fence. So for me, this is how much has Pantoja improved. I definitely can't bet Pantoja in this fight because the blueprint is there to beat him. We've seen it used before. His takedown defense isn't great, but generally he has shown pretty good ability to get back to his feet pretty quickly. He's at American Top Team. He should be improving. You imagine that's a facet of his game he's definitely been working on. So yeah, so this just comes down to whether he can disengage. I've seen people betting Wilson Hayes. Definitely don't fault that at all. There's a clear path. The line's slowly coming down on Wilson. He's now at plus 140. Pantoja's minus 160. I am going to pick Pantoja though. Just, it's not a confident pick, but I just think Wilson might be reaching the end of the road, just slowing down a touch. I just didn't like that he was able to kind of fully maintain control over Moraga and Ben 10 like he did with Dustin Ortiz a couple of years ago. It just suggests to me that maybe as he lost a step ever so slightly, he just wasn't able to really keep them down or keep the control against the fence. I mean, Moraga he did control in round 3, but first 2 rounds he lost. And I'm buying into Pantoja having made improvements here. It's definitely a weakness in his game. I think Hayes is going to be able to take him down, but I just think Pantoja is going to be able to get back to his feet, manage to disengage, and I do favour him fairly strongly in the striking. So I think he can do enough on the feet to squeak out a decision here, but I definitely wouldn't bet Pantoja because I'm relying on improvements here that we haven't actually seen. So I could be off, but it should be something he's been working on like hell, because this is what Hayes is going to bring, is the takedown and clinch game, which we have seen Pantoja struggle with before. So I am going for improvements. I'm also siding with Hayes, maybe dropping off slightly. So the value probably is with Hayes at plus 140. Definitely don't fault anyone taking a stab at that at all, but I am going to pick Pantoja here to win a decision, closely contested fight. But I just think the judges are going to favour his work on the feet with his hands as opposed to the success Hayes has with maybe getting takedowns, but Pantoja getting back to the feet, so it kind of cancels out the takedown. And I just think he's going to be able to get off the fence as well. Hayes is going to be trying to take back control, stand in, maybe try and take his back, pull him down. But I'm hoping for improvements here from Pantoja. So it is a bit of a leap of faith that I'm taking here in picking Pantoja. But I'm going to pick him. But yeah, I do get why people are on Hayes completely, and hope I don't regret not taking a stab at Hayes here. Men's lightweight division next. This should be a really entertaining fight. We've got Jalin Turner taking on Matt Frevola. Jalin is about 5 inches taller. He's got a 6-inch reach advantage. Fights out of the southpaw stance. geez, his strikes landed per minute is up at almost 11. Frevola's just under 4. Strikes absorbed though is just under 9 for Turner. Frevola's at 4. Frevola averages 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, 40% takedown accuracy. Turner 1.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, 100% takedown accuracy. He's got 100% takedown defense at the moment. Frevola's takedown defense at 83%. So this is a really interesting fight. Turner is a very dangerous striker. Uses all 8 weapons really well. He's got good power. He's very big for the weight division. 6'3", long reach. What I don't like about Turner is he's already been KO'd 3 times in his professional career, and he has a knockout loss in the amateurs as well. So, I mean, I've not seen every knockout loss. I don't know whether he's been getting put out cold or whether maybe a couple of them is just the ref stepping in, but it's a bit of a concern that he's got 4 stoppage losses already. That doesn't bode well moving forward, and the Vicente Luque knockout was absolutely brutal. But we first saw him on the Contender Series against Mac Mustaki, who Max is like a poor man's Justin Gaethje. He just absolutely doesn't stop moving forward, and he got absolutely chewed up by Turner in that fight. He quit in his corner. I think did he hurt his foot or his shin or his hand? I can't remember, but yeah, fight got stopped in the corner. I think it was short notice against Vicente up at welterweight. Got brutally knocked out, and then a quick win over Callum Potter back in February, back at lightweight. So yeah, this guy's really dangerous in round 1. We have seen him in the past kind of slow down. The Richard Leroy fight, he got knocked out in the 3rd round. You can't find the whole fight, but there's highlights. I think it's on his Facebook page. I found the highlights, and the back and forth war. I think Leroy was dropped a couple of times in that fight, but managed to persevere and come through. If you go back and watch Turner's fight with Andrew Lagden back in September 2016, so it's 2.5 years ago now, but yeah, Turner looks absolutely terrible on the floor, like real bad. But these young guys make such big improvements. He was only 20 years of age, he's 23 now. You've got to assume that he's improved a lot. I think from looking at his Insta, he's a purple belt now in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Trains at a legitimate camp. He's with Jason Perillo, so he's getting to train with RDA and beasts like that. So yeah, he's dangerous, this guy, but I do worry about his chin, and the verdict is still out on his gas tank. Matt Frevola, can go hard for 3 rounds. He's going to have no problem going at a high pace. He's that kind of guy. He's got some power in his hands. Only the one KO win on his record, but he does have power. He is hittable. We saw Marco Polo Hayes absolutely knock him cold in his UFC debut, and then he's coming off a draw with Lando Venata, where I don't know how he recovered in that fight. Venata had him hurt a couple of times badly, but he managed to come back and squeak out the draw. I watched his Titan fight against Manfio. Manfio looks like a pretty solid fighter, so that was a decent decision win for him. Comfortable win on the Contender Series for the whole part. So Matt's he needs to use his wrestling here against Turner. It's going to be very dangerous if he stays on the feet with him. Can he get the takedowns? From what we've seen historically, yes, but it's hard to gauge how much Turner's improved, because the 3 fights we've seen since the Contender Series have just been stand-up fights. No one's really tried to mix in the wrestling. I can't remember if Max managed to take him down or not. I don't think he did. I think they just stood. But Frevola's definitely going to have better takedowns than anyone he's ever faced. So this is going to be a testament to how much Turner has improved with regards to his takedown defense and ground game. It's a hard fight. This is another hard fight to call. It's the lines of pick'em, which I agree with. You've got to give the advantage to Turner on the feet, but is Turner going to slow down if he can't get him out of there in round 1? And what's he going to be like on the ground? I'm going to go with Frevola here. I would not be surprised if Turner knocks him out in round 1, but there's question marks still on Turner's cardio. There's question marks on his takedown defence and ground game, so we just haven't seen them for a couple of years. And Frevola is with Sarah Longo camp. This guy's going to be a nightmare on the floor probably for Turner. He surely comes out of an intelligent game plan here, which is to take Turner down and not sprawl on the feet with him. So I'm going to pick Frevola here to maybe get a submission win. Maybe drag Turner into deep waters. I think Frevola's maybe going to have to come through some tough spots in round 1. But we saw him do that against Lando, so he's definitely game. So I'm going to pick Frevola to win. Turner also, he's very big for the weight, so is that going to jeopardise his cardio? So hard fight to be confident in. I don't really see how anyone can be betting on this fight because of the unknowns, but I'm going to go with Frevola to pull out the win here. But I would like Turner to win because he does look like an exciting prospect. So if I would like to see him extended here though, because I do want to see what his cardio is like. I do want to see what his takedown defense is like, even what his ground game is like. But if that has kind of been shored up, then this is a dangerous guy on the feet. So Frevola's the pick, but I would like Turner to win here because 23 years of age. I don't think Frevola's got a high ceiling in the UFC, whereas Turner potentially could have. We move to the main card now. First fight is in the men's light heavyweight division. We've got Ovince St. Preux taking on Nikita Krylov. I've got to admit, before I done tape on this, I was pretty adamant in my head that based on the odds, I was going to be betting Krylov. But this is another fight on this card that's just really hard to call and really hard to get a read on in terms of kind of where the person's at currently. Ovince, is he at the end of his career? And Nikita Krylov, how much has he improved since his first UFC run? Because in his UFC debut, didn't look like he was still having the same problems that plagued him in his first UFC run. Quick look over the stats. So they're the same height, 6'3". Ovince has a 3-inch reach advantage, 80 inches. He's a southpaw as well. Strikes landed per minute, Nikita's up at over 5.5. Ovince is just over 2.5. Similar amount of strikes absorbed per minute, both just over 2.5. Takedown average, Ovince, he only averages just over 1 takedown per 15 minutes. Nikita's, he doesn't go for takedowns generally, less than 1. OSP, 40% takedown accuracy, 66% takedown defense. Nikita, 28% takedown accuracy and 40% takedown defense. Now that's a big red flag for Nikita, and that's something that I just don't know if he's improved upon it or not. It definitely didn't look like it in his UFC debut. So Nikita had a run in the UFC a couple of years ago. I mean, he won most of his fights, but he didn't fight the best of guys. He made his UFC debut at heavyweight. He lost to So Pelele. Then he got a quick win over Walt Harris. Then he moved down to light heavyweight, lost to OSP very quickly, Von Fluchoke. Then he had a number of wins over guys that just aren't particularly high level. Cody Donovan, Stanislav Nedkov, De Lima, Francimar Barroso, Ed Herman. Then he lost to Serkinov. Then he got cut, went away, won 4 fights out of the UFC. First 2 guys I'd never heard of. Then he beat Emmanuel Newton really quickly with a knee. Then he beat Fabio Maldonado, knockout in the 2nd round. So then UFC brought him back, because I do think he's a UFC caliber fighter. Nikita is very exciting to watch, very nice stand-up. He fought Jan Blachowicz, and it just looked like the same problems, just getting taken down easily. His ground game didn't look great. I mean, you look at his record, he's got 10 KO wins and 14 submission wins. But I just don't really, I'm not sold on the guy's ground game particularly. His takedown defense isn't there, but he's got really nice stand-up. Something to note as well, this guy's never been to a decision. He's had 30 professional MMA fights, 24 he's won, never been to a decision. So this guy is kill or be killed. He's only been knocked out once, but 5 submission losses. So it just shows, though, he's still got a hole in his game. Blachowicz arm triangled him in the second round. And I think the arm triangle's a common theme if you look through his guillotine by Serkinov, Von Flue choke, so that is kind of an arm triangle. Arm triangle lost back in 2013, 2 of them to the same guy. So he really struggles with them arm triangle chokes, Von Flue chokes, and yeah, it's just hard to know how much he's improved, because you look at his fights since being cut by the UFC, and they're all kind of demolition jobs. You know, he's not really fought anyone. 2 of the wins are really, really quick wins. 2 of the other wins are early in round 2. But against Blachowicz, it looked to me like he just hasn't made the steps that I would have liked to have seen. He had, you know, almost 2 years out of the UFC. So it just worries me here. He's a rematch an OSP who beat him really quickly when they first fought, but it was a long time ago, and OSP, there are signs that he is starting to regress. He's been badly hurt in these last 3 fights. Latifi had him out on the feet before locking up the guillotine. Pedro dropped him, and Dominic Hayes basically knocked him out at the end of the fight. So the chin seems to be going. He kind of has relied on his athleticism. If that's something you've relied on as a fighter and it's starting to slow down, then it's definitely, the end is near. Now, he's 35 years of age now, almost 36 in fact. He's 36 in a couple of days. He's getting on for having had 40 fights now. What I did like is against Dominic Hayes, he did get, I mean, Hayes managed to pop back to his feet very quickly, but he did get Hayes down a couple of times, and I'm just not sold on Krylov's takedown defense at all. And the ground game, I mean, if he ends up on his back here, I'm really worried that what he done as well against, I think it was Blachowicz, is he got taken down and he held on to the neck like he did against OSP when he got Von Flue. And I mean, eventually he did let go of the neck, but the Von Flue was there again, and it's like, have you not learned anything, man? I mean, come on. So yeah, I went from pre-tape thinking I was going to be on Krylov to, yeah, I'm just got to pass on this fight. I just don't know if OSP has enough left to beat Krylov, but with Krylov, I just don't know if he's improved. So I mean, I am going to pick Krylov here. I think he might get the knockout win, but yeah, it's hard to trust either guy. As a bettor, I don't fancy putting my money on either. What I am definitely interested in is fight doesn't go the distance. Currently minus 285. I think it should be more like minus 500. Nikita's never been the distance. Now you got to imagine there's going to be a time when he does go the distance. But OSP, you know, generally finishes if he wins, and his chin is starting to definitely look more and more delicate. As I said, hurting his last 3 fights badly. So I just don't see this fight going to a decision. If we look at his record, OSP's last 1, 2, 3, his last 6 fights, 5 have ended inside the distance. It's only the Hayes fight that went to a decision, and I mean, for all intents and purposes, that didn't go to a decision. He got knocked out, but it was just on the bell. So yeah, I'm surprised the line on that is so low. I mean, I don't really like playing juiced fights that don't go the distance lines, but this is one that looks like it should be higher. So kind of interested in possibly looking at that when it's released on UK books. But yeah, it is juiced. But yeah, I'm going to go Krylov, but I just think it's a hard fight to be confident in. I don't see how anyone can be overly confident in this fight. To continue the theme of fights that are really hard to be confident in or get a full read on, we've got Alan Jouban taking on Dwight Grant. Alan Jouban, for me, he's the much better fighter. He's much better technically, but Dwight Grant's just got some freaky power, and Alan Jouban is looking a bit chinny, unfortunately. Quick look over the stats. We've got similar height, 5-inch reach advantage for Dwight. Alan does fight out of a southpaw stance. He's 3 years older. He lands over 5 significant strikes per minute, Alan. Dwight's at about 3. Strikes absorbed for Alan is 3.5. Dwight's at 2. Yeah, these two don't go for takedowns. This is going to be a stand-up fight for sure. So Alan Jouban, yeah, he's got solid striking. He's 36 now, so he is getting on. 16-6 record, 11 KO wins, 5 by decision. He's been knocked out 3 times. In the UFC, Tumenov put him out cold, bad knockout. Nico Price put him out badly as well. Gunnar Nelson hurt him badly on the feet, but instead of piling on the punches, he just took the guillotine choke. So yeah, the chin is a worry for me. His other TKO loss was to the body, and he did survive an onslaught from Warlley Alves, but that was back in 2014. There's definite signs that the chin is in jeopardy. But he's a solid fighter. He's coming off a win over Ben Saunders, knocked him out. He's got wins over Mike Perry, fought very smart in the Mike Perry fight. Everyone thought Mike Perry was going to knock him out, but fought very clever, fought the range game. He actually dropped Mike Perry, I think, maybe twice in that. So Jouban's got power himself. He put Belal Muhammad down about 3 times, just couldn't get the finish on Belal. So yeah, let's not sleep on Alan's power. He's got power in his hands. But yeah, the chin is the worry. I really don't rate Dwight Grant at all. He comes out of AKA. He's 34 years of age, so I think what we've seen from Dwight Grant so far is what we get. I can't see his ceiling being any higher than what it is. I'm not high on him at all. I watched him on the Contender Series. I thought he was very sloppy, but he's just got that equaliser, that big power. Got a second round knockout over Tyler Hill. Then he lost a controversial decision to Zach Otto. It was a poor fight, and he couldn't put Zach Otto away. And Zach Otto, for me, is, I mean, the guy doesn't like being hit at all. I think he's a quitter. His chin's no worse than Alan Jouban, and Alan Jouban's definitely got a fighter's mentality, whereas I'm not sure Zach does. So, you know, Zach lasted the distance. Maybe he was on his on the back foot a bit, maybe running away a bit too much, but you know, he couldn't put Zach Otto away, and ultimately he lost the fight. And he's got the nice knockout win over Carlo Pedicoli, but I mean, Pedicoli was coming back from a bad knockout loss to Brazilian Cowboy, so you know, how resilient is Pedicoli? That was a fight that I 100% passed on as well. So for me, I think Alan Jouban is definitely the better fighter, but I can see him getting clipped. So I am going to pick Alan here to win because I have to pick the better fighter. But I would not be shocked at all if Dwight Grant manages to catch him. Now, it's about a pick-em line at the moment. I think it's probably about right based on Alan's chin, but I'm interested to see what the Grant KO line will be, because if you can bet Alan and hedge with Dwight Grant KO, I definitely think that's worthwhile, because I do not see Dwight Grant winning the decision here. Alan is definitely the better fighter for me. So I'm going to pick Alan to win a decision. But yeah, if you're betting Alan, it's going to be sweaty, because Dwight could end the fight at any point. But I'm definitely do not rate Dwight Grant, and I really hope the better fighter in Alan Jouban wins here. Men's light heavyweight division next. We've got Eryk Anders taking on Khalil Rountree. So this should hopefully be an entertaining fight. Quick look over the stats. Both the same height, 6'1", 1 inch reach advantage for Khalil. Both are southpaws. Eryk's 3 years older. Strikes landed per minute. Eryk's at 3, Khalil 2.3. Strikes absorbed. Eryk's up at nearly 4. Khalil's just over 3. Khalil doesn't go for takedowns. Eryk Anders, something he will mix in though. He averages 2 takedowns per 15 minutes, 41% takedown accuracy. So basically, this fight is, you've got Khalil Rountree, very explosive, very athletic, very fast, very powerful, but kind of a one-round fighter. Kind of gas tank depletes, and he is pretty much just a striker. We've seen no or poor takedown defense from him. We've seen a poor ground game. Lost to Andrew Sanchez, got wrestled in his UFC debut. Tyson Pedro, he dropped Pedro. Pedro got up, took him down, submitted him. He got comfortable wins over Dan Jolly and Paul Craig. He lost to Mikhail, the Polish chap. It was actually overturned because Mikhail failed a drugs test, but he came out hard in round 1, couldn't put Mikhail away. Mikhail turned it up, and yeah, Khalil was he was breathing heavy after about 3 minutes of round 1. Got a quick win over Gokhan Saki, who I think is a shot fighter, and he's coming off a brutal elbow loss to Johnny Walker. So Khalil, yeah, he's a bit of a one-trick pony. He's fast, athletic, he's got good power on the feet, but he's got no ground game, no wrestling, and his gas tank depletes. Eryk Anders is moving up to light heavyweight here, which I think is a better weight class for him. He was a big middleweight. You could see that, you know, he's barrel-chested. He looks like a really fit guy. I think light heavyweight's the better weight class for him. Funnily enough, the performance of his I'm most impressed with was the short notice Thiago Santos fight, which was at light heavyweight. But he came into the UFC, quickly put Rafael Natal away. Just to note as well, prior to his UFC debut, he won a 5-round decision. So this guy can go 5 rounds. So there's a big cardio advantage for him here. But yeah, he put Rafael Natal away, which doesn't necessarily mean much because Natal retired after that fight. But then he beat Marcus Perez, who, I mean, Marcus is never going to be a title contender, but he's a tricky fighter, and Anders pretty much shut him down. Controversial loss to Machida. I scored that fight for Anders. I remember going into round 5 on live bet. Machida was something nuts like plus 700. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, there was a possibility that Anders was going to get robbed there. I did think he was still going to get the decision, but yeah, he ultimately lost a split that I don't agree with. That should be a win for me on his record, but he was a little bit hesitant there of Machida's counters. Tim Williams, that was a poor performance against Tim Williams, who isn't great. I don't really know what to notch that down to. Potentially he was a little bit worried of Tim Williams' takedown threat, made him just way too hesitant. You know, sometimes you just have an off day at the office. I don't know, it wasn't a great performance, but I mean, he got the stoppage win late. I think he was going to get the decision anyway, but it just wasn't an impressive performance. Then he took the Thiago Santos fight on about a week's notice up at light heavyweight, and I was really impressed with him in that fight. He pressured Santos well, he landed some big shots pressuring Santos, and he mixed in the takedowns really well. Ultimately he got stopped with the Travis Brown elbows at the end of round 3, but that was a really competitive fight, and it was definitely the toughest fight of Thiago Santos' light heavyweight career. So what Eryk showed me in that fight is that he can pressure smartly. He pressures in all these fights. He's always on the front foot. He's got a dangerous left hand, as we know, from the southpaw stance, but he also mixed in his wrestling really well there, which I think this is the key to beating Khalil, is basically using that Thiago Santos template. He's also coming off a split decision win to Elias Theodorou. Had Theodorou really badly hurt in round 2, but just couldn't get the finish. And I mean, look, Elias is a tough guy to look good against because he will fight on the back foot at range. He will spam kicks. He's constantly moving. He's a difficult guy to look good against. You know, if you can't peg him down, he's just on the move constantly. He's got a good gas tank for middleweight to be able to maintain that kind of style. Spams those kicks from the outside. He's also a big middleweight, Elias. I think he cuts from like about 230 pounds, so he's pretty strong as well. I mean, it was a close fight, but you know, I mean, it's not a great look that he lost to him, Eryk, especially as hurt as he had him in round 2, and maybe he was looking for that left hand a little bit too much. But he's actually done his camp for this fight at Factory X, and he's actually spoken about not just looking for the left hand and setting up the left hand more by peppering more and also mixing in his wrestling. So I really think he's going to look to implement the Thiago Santos blueprint here, pressure Khalil. He's going to have to stay tough. It's going to be a tough first few minutes because Khalil does bring the heat, but I think if he can start grinding Khalil, start wearing him out. He used the wrestling well against Marcus Perez as well, so it's not just the Santos fight that we've seen it. So Eryk is he's a decent wrestler, a decent top control. So I think that's going to be the plan here, just wear on Khalil. He's going to probably have to take a few shots, but I'm confident in Eryk's chin. So yeah, I do like Anders here a lot. I think he's going to win a decision through pressure. I think he can get some shots off standing and ultimately mixing in the wrestling. Now the line's increased a lot for Anders across the week. He's minus 190 now, which I wouldn't be as keen on playing. He was around minus 150, which yeah, I did like that line, but now he's at almost minus 200 now, so it's getting tougher to play him. But I do like Anders here, as long as he can survive the first few minutes kind of blitz that Khalil's going to come out with. But if Khalil's smart, he's not going to come out with that blitz. He's got to pace himself better. But if he's not really letting his shots go, and he's letting Anders kind of dictate the pace and push him back, and he's kind of not warding Anders off, then it just plays into Anders' hands. So I just think it's a tough fight for Khalil. So I'm definitely picking Anders here, and I'm going to go with him to win via decision. Men's middleweight division next. It's the interim middleweight title fight. Israel Adesanya taking on Kelvin Gastelum. Quick look over the stats. So we've got some crazy stats here. So Israel is going to be 6 or 7 inches taller. He's got a 9-inch reach advantage. Gastelum southpaw. Adesanya can fight comfortably out of either stance. He's a couple of years older than Kelvin. Strikes landed per minute. Kelvin's just under 4. Adesanya's up at 4.5. Strikes absorbed. Kelvin's basically at 3. Israel's at 2. Takedown, so doesn't apply to Israel. Takedown defense though, 85%. Kelvin averages less than 1 takedown per 15 minutes. We don't need to look at his takedown defense. Not going to come into play here. So I've got to admit, before I went into tape, I just didn't know where I was going to be going on this one. I felt quite hesitant, and that it was probably going to be a fight that I wouldn't look to play, but I rushed into tape as soon as I saw Israel had dropped to minus 165 though. So yeah, I've been nothing but impressed with Israel Adesanya, I must admit. I bet him in his UFC debut against Rob Wilkinson. Tough first round against Rob, who was just a complete grinder, but Israel showed solid takedown defense, and Rob gassed as we suspected he would after watching tape, and he just got stopped. Marvin Vettori fight. Now that wasn't Israel's best fight. The first round, Israel does tend to take a round to get his reads. First round was fairly close. Second round, Israel started to style on Vettori on the feet. Looked really, really good. Third round, Vettori actually managed to get his wrestling going. Got Israel down a couple of times. Israel ultimately did manage to get back to his feet, which for me is pretty impressive because Vettori is a legit grappler. He's really, really dangerous with his submissions. So, a lot of people kind of took the negatives from that, but I took the positives in that he managed to still work his way back to his feet, and he wasn't in any danger whatsoever with submissions. So I won a split decision there. Round 1 was closer than I recalled. I thought Israel clearly won the first 2 rounds, but I still gave Israel round 1, but it was definitely close, and it's not surprising that the judges were split on it. But round 2 he looked great, and round 3 ultimately lost because he did spend a large part of that round getting wrestled. But then he had a 5-rounder, and I think 5 rounds definitely suit Israel Adesanya because, like I said, he takes a round to get his reads, and then he just, as he gets more and more comfortable in there, he just gets better and better. The Brad Tavares fight was nothing short of spectacular. Brad's a solid fighter. I'm not saying he's a title contender, but the way he shut Brad down was just, again, round 1 was fairly competitive, but 2-5. Man, that was just spectacular display from Israel. He looked spectacular. He was even kind of, Brad's a strong middleweight, and he was, Israel is physically strong, even though he's not a big middleweight. The guy's got some strength. He was tossing Brad around. Brad did get one takedown in the fight, I think it was round 5, but Israel quickly back to his feet, stuffed all the other takedown attempts, just looked really, really good. Derek Brunson couldn't get him down, was constantly trying to take him down for the first 3 minutes or so. Israel landed a big knee, and that was the beginning of the end. And then Anderson Silva fight, he didn't look great in that fight. It was 1-1 going into round 3. Israel comfortably took round 3. Like I said, 5 rounds definitely favours him because he starts to get his reads and so forth. But Anderson's a tough guy to look good against. He's very unorthodox stand up. He's very dangerous. It's even at his age, he still looks good, Anderson. So yeah, he's still got comfortably won round 1 and round 3. But yeah, this guy switches stances seamlessly. He's got good hands. He's got good kicks. I think he's going to try and work Kelvin's inside calf. We saw him do that too. I think it was Marvin, who's a southpaw, really went to work on Marvin's inside calf. I think he's going to try and do that to Kelvin, try and slow him down. But yeah, this guy doesn't discriminate in where he attacks. He'll attack the legs, he'll attack the body, he'll attack the head. He's good in the clinch. Yeah, and the longer this fight goes, the worse it's probably going to get for Kelvin Gastelum. Now, Kelvin's a southpaw. He's got a dangerous left hand. He hits hard. But I'm after tape, and I might end up with egg on my face here, but I really think that Israel's going to style on Kelvin. I can see round 1 being fairly competitive, but over 5 rounds, I just think Israel pulls away. Now, this is a dangerous fight for Israel in the sense that 5 rounds, it gives Kelvin a long time to find that left hand, because he does hit hard. Israel, albeit he is good defensively, he rolls really well. He uses the stiff arm to defend. He can be hit, but what I've noticed with Israel is he rolls with the punches really well. He doesn't ever seem to absorb a shot full on. Really rolls with them well. So he's hard to hit flush. So this is going to be hard work for Kelvin, I think. But he does have a puncher's chance. He does hit hard. I think his power is maybe slightly overrated. He was comfortably beating Nate Marquardt, but that was a corner stoppage. The corner pulled him out. It didn't actually put Nate away. Neil Magny went 5 rounds with him. Now I know he dropped Neil, but Neil, he didn't really look majorly hurt. A shot Johnny Hendricks that was coming off a round 1 loss to Wonderboy, went the distance with him. Tim Kennedy was more of a drop in his cardio really that caused him to get stopped in that fight. Knockout wins over Vitor doesn't mean anything in this day and age. And Bisping, who was a couple of weeks removed from a horrible knockout loss, and who's since retired, again I don't read too much into that. Dropped Chris Weidman, but Weidman got back to his feet. It was towards the end of the round, but Weidman didn't look like he was overly hurt. And for me, apart from that punch he landed on Weidman was outstriking him. Big reach advantage Weidman had, and I thought he was kind of comfortably winning the strike in there. And then we had the Jacare fight where, Jacare was just kind of brawling with him, and it was pretty competitive. So one thing to note is a lot of people were leaning on Gastelum using his wrestling here, which he has in the past, not for a long time, and he does have some good rear naked choke wins, but I honestly am not worried about the wrestling at all. Now I'm prepared to have egg on my face here if I'm wrong, but I think Israel has got solid takedown defense. I think he's got solid get-ups. I'm really not worried about the wrestling or submission aspect here. If it bites me in the arse, it bites me in the arse, but I'm very impressed with Israel defensive grappling, and I don't see Kelvin having much success with it at all. So for me, it's not a concern. My biggest concern is if Kelvin can land a big shot on the feet, which I think he probably will have to early, because I think as Israel gets more and more comfortable, things are just going to get tougher and tougher for Gastelum. Now Gastelum's tough. I'm not sure if Israel can get him out of there. Perhaps if he lands a flush head kick, something like that. But I expect a dominant display here, and I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but the line dropping to -165, I don't get at all. I think Israel should be in the -200 range here comfortably. I am very apprehensive about going big though, because of what has happened in recent weeks. Now I shouldn't think like that as a bettor. Percentage wise it should even itself out and over the course of a year, but we've had how many comeback one punch wins lately. We've had Masvidal just absolutely spark Darren Till after being in trouble in round 1. We had Wonderboy one punch knockout from Pettis, a fight he was in absolute control of. We had Tim Means as well, absolute control. We also had Tim Means styling on Nico Price, and then he gets one punch. So yeah, it's just hard for me not to have that in the back of my mind at the moment. Even though, like I said, as a bettor, we have to look at how things are going to play out across a year, and realistically, this is kind of a fluky period that we've gone through, and it should stop soon. But Kelvin does have that power where he can one punch someone, but you know, Israel's experienced striker, and as I said, he rolls very well with the punches. He doesn't keep his hands up though, so you know there is opportunity there for Kelvin to land, but he has to navigate a big reach advantage, a big height advantage as well. But I am very confident in Israel. Yeah, -165. I'm very surprised it dropped that low. It's back to -185 now. I'm not sure where it's gonna. I don't know what people are looking at. Honestly, I don't know if people are thinking the wrestling's going to come into play. I don't see that at all. I really think that's off. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm literally not worried about that one bit. My main concern is if he can land a big one shot. But it's a big ask against someone as good as Israel. So I'm going for Israel. Decision. A late stoppage wouldn't even shock me, because as I said, he just gets better and better as he works his opponent out and gets more comfortable in there. So I'll say Israel decision, but I expect it to be a dominant display. So we move to the main event now, the UFC interim lightweight title bout. Max Holloway taking on Dustin Poirier. Quick look over the stats. Max 2 inches taller at 5'11". Dustin has a 3-inch reach advantage, 72 inches. Dustin's southpaw, Max is orthodox. Strikes landed per minute, Max is 7. Dustin is just under 6. Strikes absorbed, Max is at 4. Poirier's at just under 4. Takedowns, no point really looking at Max's, but his takedown defense is 83%. Dustin Poirier averages just under 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's got 69% takedown defense, but I don't expect him to kind of have to rely on that here. So this is a really good fight. I'm really excited for this one. Max moving up to 155. He's been struggling to make 145. I wonder if he will ultimately end up staying at 155. He's 27 now. Must be getting harder and harder for him to make 145. Max Holloway is basically a tremendous high volume pressure fighter. He doesn't have big one punch knockout power, but he just breaks and wears guys down and takes them out. Literally his last 4 fights will give you everything you need to know about Max and his style. The Anthony Pettis fight, the 2 Jose Aldo fights, and the Brian Ortega fight. There was a lot of question marks on Max going into that Ortega fight. There was some concussion symptoms and so forth that kind of it looks like everyone read too much into, because he absolutely styled on Brian Ortega. And I loved at the end of round 3 when he was looking at the commentary booth saying, I'm going to finish him this round. And well, ultimately he did, because they stopped it between the 4th and 5th round. So yeah, tremendous volume, very good boxing. What I will say though is Max his style does make him very hittable. Now he's always shown a solid chin. He's never been knocked out, He's only been stopped once. Funnily enough, that was by Dustin Poirier, but the fight, it's over 7 years ago. They're both completely different fighters now. I can't really read into that fight at all. I mean, really, these two their styles are pretty similar, but Dustin Poirier does have a power advantage for sure in terms of one-shot KO power. Dustin, he used to fight at 145 like Max. He moved up to lightweight a while ago, and he's looked spectacular at lightweight. His power has just looked tremendous. So he moved up after the Conor McGregor loss, blew away Carlos Diego Ferreira, blew away Yancy Medeiros. The Joseph Duffy fight was very competitive on the feet, and Poirier actually changed up his game plan there and actually ended up winning that fight through wrestling Joseph Duffy. After that fight, blew away Bobby Green, suffered a bad knockout loss to Michael Johnson early in the first round. Then he came away with a decision win over Jim Miller. Really tough fight against Jim Miller, because Jim Miller actually wrecked Dustin's calf with the low calf kicks. So I remember I bet Dustin Poirier in that fight, and I remember going into round 3 I was extremely worried I was going to lose that bet, but again Dustin Poirier managed to call on his wrestling to get him out of a hole there. Then he had the no contest ultimately with Eddie Alvarez, win over Anthony Pettis, win over Justin Gaethje, and he got the win over Eddie Alvarez last time out back in July. So yeah, I mean, Poirier is very dangerous on the feet. He's got big power. I mean, to actually out savage Justin Gaethje, I mean, that says it all. I've always had a little, I mean, I don't know, I think maybe it's something that I don't need to be worried about, but I don't know why, but just in the back of my mind I've always worried about Dustin's chin a little bit. I mean, he got slept by Michael, put out by Conor, although that was a punch behind the ear. I think it was Akira Kurosani that hurt him as well, but I mean, maybe I'm just reading too much into it. I mean, he's gone back and forth with Gaethje and Alvarez, albeit we have seen him hurt in them fights as well. So, but Holloway, he isn't a big puncher. It's all accumulation with Max. Dustin Poirier does punch harder. You know, this is a hard fight to call. You know, Max could look a lot better at 155. He might even, you know, might bring some power up with him as well. But at current odds, I definitely can't play Max. Max has come down a little bit. He was up at -250. He's -210 now, and I really won't be surprised if that line gets a lot closer on fight week. It's a really tough fight to call. Honestly, I don't know what way to go in this fight. It's a real tough one. It's going to be very entertaining as long as it lasts. As I said, they both like to come forward. They both throw in high volume. They're both hittable. Dustin Poirier might be able to fall on plan B. Like I said, as I broke down some of his fights, he has used wrestling in the past. We saw him beat Anthony Pettis on the ground as well, so it is something that maybe he could mix in here. Don't know how much success he'll have against Max keeping him down. I mean, Ortega took him down a couple of times, but he got straight back up. Just haven't really seen his takedown defense overly tested, not by anyone who's particularly competent with wrestling. I didn't go back and watch the Ricardo Lamas fight, but I know Lamas didn't have any success wrestling. I can't remember if he did, but he's not really faced any wrestlers, Max. So, I mean, there is potential that Dustin could mix things up here, but real tough fight to call. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna pick Poirier purely based. I'm a better. I think the line is a bit too wide. Poirier has big power. I don't see why, if he lands flush, why he couldn't hurt Max and put him away. But you know, Max is so good. But Poirier seems like a man that's very intent on winning this strap. I follow him on Twitter, and he's always posting out motivational stuff and saying it's his destiny, and he's a really, really solid fighter. This is going to be a great fight, but yeah, he's got the power. I'm going to go with Poirier. I think he can put Max away. Max is very hittable. I mean, I would not be surprised at all. This isn't a confident pick, but I think this should be more like a pick-em line, to be honest with you. Maybe Max a slight favourite, but with Dustin sitting at plus 175 as a better, I think the value's with him. So I'm going to pick Dustin Poirier. I can see it bet 365, he's plus 187. So I'm going to go with Poirier to win the interim title here at lightweight, but it's going to be a great fight. I cannot wait to see this. But yeah, the pick for me is Poirier to win by knockout. So that wraps up this card, guys. We've had a 2-week break. There's, I think it's about 5 consecutive UFCs now until the next break. So I'll be back in just over a week's time to break down the UFC card in Russia. Just to remind you, ProMMABetting.com for package information. We are up, if you're £100 per £100 unit better, or £100 or $100 per unit better, we are up £5,700 or dollars this year in 2019 with our pre-betting service and our live betting service. We're 9-1 on UFC events for pre-bets, so we've had a great start to the year. Check out the packages. Give me a follow on Twitter at ProMMABetting, and also hit the subscribe button for our YouTube channel, and we'll keep these videos coming. So good luck everyone with your bets, and speak to you all in just over a week.